It started on a night so cold, my breath turned into little ghosts on the windshield. Theo was curled in the back, in every jacket we owned. The heater had died at Thanksgiving, and never apologized. And I was parked behind a bowling alley in Rivermont, Ohio, counting $11 like it could multiply. If I stared hard enough, yeah, that happened. And right there, under a buzzing streetlight, was a paper that said, Public Storage Auction. Saturday cash only, like the universe had pinned a dare to a telephone pole and waited to see if I'd flinch. Before all this, I had a regular life. A rental with a squeaky door. A husband named Caleb who built decks and excuses me cleaning lake houses for people whose dogs had better health insurance than I did. Moving quiet eyes trained to know what was cheap and what was cherished. Just by the way it sat on a shelf, then, the divorce came with big words from his lawyer. Like unsophisticated and unaware assets I never saw, became smoke rent, turned into an eviction notice. And I told my 9-year-old we were going on an adventure, because sometimes the truth is too heavy for bedtime. I showed up at the auction with $41 lukewarm coffee, and a face that said I'd slept in a van. The regulars were already joking about whose truck would haul the good stuff. The auctioneer had a voice like steel on steel, as is cash on the nail. Doors rattled up, furniture legs meant money, kitchen boxes meant money. Everything flew for hundreds, while I kept my hands in my pockets and my heart behind my ribs. Then we reached Unit B19. The door jittered like it regretted being born inside. Were a few boxes, a cracked lamp, a plastic bin. Somebody behind me laughed. The auctioneer called 20, then 10, nobody moved. So I raised my hand, because fear is loud when you're starving, and hope is a whisper. You have to lean toward a guy. In camo bumped it to 15 just to watch me twitch, I said. 16, he said 17. I jumped to 21 because sometimes you have to act like you belong, or you never will. Sold to the lady in the brown coat, key in my palm, nausea in my throat, and the crowd wandered off like I had just bought a pile of bad decisions. I opened B19 slow like it might bite dust and cardboard rolled out. First box was clothes that had seen their wars. Second was paperbacks with spines cracked by somebody who used to love afternoons. Third was dishes wrapped in old comics, chipped, but still capable of carrying a sandwich if the day required it. And then the plastic bin, a quilt with a burn hole, a stack of letters tied with twine, a wooden cigar box that knocked soft. When I lifted it, inside was a velvet pouch, the color of a storm bruise. And my fingers went numb for a second. I slid out a necklace. Sterling hand worked a swallow, mid-flight with tiny stones like stars across the wings. It felt like a secret that had taken years to build. Under that were papers with stiff edges and ink that refused to fade names. I didn't know a black and white photo of a young woman in a polka dot dress wearing that exact swallow at her throat. And I swear my scalp tingled like when you stand up too fast and the world tilts. I locked it all in the van and parked under the library's last crooked tree, told Theo we were on a treasure hunt. You should have seen his grin. We spread everything across the back seat. And I read once, my hands stopped shaking. The letters were from an Isabel Benitez to her mother, starting in 1961. A love her father hated, a move to Cleveland. A daughter she wanted her family to know, 20 years of, I hope the door opens, written in the kind of script that makes you feel the person still sitting there. And the papers under them were ledgers and a trust declaration that said beneficiary, Marina Duarte, with account numbers and tax receipts that made my stomach flip like a bad carnival ride. Rafael Benitez, shipping magnate, died in 1992. Public obituaries for his sons, Luis and Mateo. Nothing about Isabel, nothing about Marina, like they were rumor and air. I'm not going to lie. I saw groceries with brand names, a front door that locked from the inside. A winter where my kid's breath didn't make little clouds. Pawn shops are friendly when you walk in holding silver. I know that smile, but every lie sticks in your throat and makes it hard to swallow. I caught Theo watching me. Mom, are we rich now? He asked, half joking, half prayer, and I told him we were something new. Then I took a breath and did what grown-ups do when the ground moves. I sat at a computer and searched Raphael's good deeds, gala photos, scholarships, a cousin's interview from way back then. A death notice for Isabel, who had become Isabel Duarte, survived by daughter name withheld, I typed. Marina Duarte nurse, and toggled the states until a hospital newsletter popped up with a photo of a woman who looked like she listened for a living. Tired eyes, steady shoulders, 40, never married, loved crosswords. And I thought, I have something that belongs to you. And if I sell the necklace first, maybe I can split the difference with the universe. But I looked at Theo's inhaler on the dash, small and white, and truer than any excuse, and asked him quietly, what's better? A full belly from keeping what isn't ours, or a hungry night, because we did the right thing? He drew a dinosaur in the fog on the window and said, without looking up, being hungry goes away, being a bad guy sticks. You know what I mean? I called Marina the next morning. My voice cracked on hello, so I cleared it and tried again. I told her my name is Nora, and I bought a storage unit and found letters from an Isabel and a trust paper in your name and a necklace. She went quiet, the way a room goes quiet before the power snaps back on. Isabel was my mom, she said. We met in a diner off Route 23. She carried herself like someone who had learned to stand without asking permission. I laid the photo, the letters, the necklace on a sticky table, and watched her hand hover over the swallow, like she was afraid it would fly away, she said. Her mother wore it when she felt brave. We read until the coffee went cold. We reached the trust, and I slid it across the formica like a passport. If this is real, she whispered, it means I wasn't nothing. And I said it means your grandfather knew and his sons buried it, and maybe fear made cowards out of them. Why give this to me, she asked, and I told her. Because my kid is watching, and I want him to learn the right lesson about his mother. The next part wasn't quick. Was courtrooms and copy paper and men with glossy shoes saying words like forgery and opportunist. One lawyer looked at my thrift store flats and said, it's a crime to be in possession of stolen property. I told him good thing it isn't stolen. It was abandoned, and it belongs to her in the hallway. Luis brushed past me and muttered, little lady, whatever story you think you're in doesn't end how you think. And I let the words hit and slide because once you've kept a child warm in a van with your own breath, you become allergic to certain tones. Signatures got verified by a man who wore his glasses on his forehead. When he got excited, the necklace matched a gala photo from 1962. A cousin testified that Raphael told him, I put something aside when the time is right. Find her the judge. A woman who looked like Patience was a resource she managed. Raised a finger every time the brothers tried to talk over Marina's lawyer. And months later, when the decision came down, the room smelled like printer ink and prayers. The trust is valid, the assets transfer to Marina Duarte. I watched her close her eyes and open them like she was redefining the word home. I didn't need her to turn around. We both knew what we'd done. I went back to the van that night, made hot chocolate on a single burner, tucked Theo's feet under my leg for warmth, slept with the necklace in a sock in the glove box, because losing the wrong thing teaches you to guard the right ones, and 2 weeks later, Marina knocked on our fogged window at 6:45 a.m. She looked inside like she had stepped into a museum of doing what you must, and said softly, "You live here for now," I said. "Not anymore," she answered, handed me keys on a sunflower keychain, and a lease with my name printed, Instead of scribbled a two-bedroom at Maple Ridge with laundry machines that don't eat your quarters. Theo ran down the hall, yelling, "Mom, the closet light turns on when you open the door." On the counter, she left an envelope I tried to give back because pride is a reflex. And she said, "Exactly. That's why it's yours." A check that felt like a bridge. She hired a lawyer who dragged Caleb into the light and made him pay what the law says. I enrolled in nonprofit classes because I refused to be just a rescue story. Marina started a foundation called First Light and told me the job description is believing a woman and building a bridge to the next solid thing. Monday, I said, I'll be there. We hung a restored photo of Isabel in our office, the swallow shining, and underneath a small card. When the right thing finally arrives, it still needs courage to cross the room. And some days, I watch women touch the glass with 2 fingers, like hello old friend Theo turned into a library kid with a favorite chair, a chess player who sacrifices his queen and cackles a boy who sleeps without curling himself into a comma. And one night while we were washing dishes, he asked the question that had been sitting in my shoe like a pebble. Did we do the right thing, even if it kept us in the van longer? I told him right and easy. Rarely dance together. Being broke happens. Being broken is a choice, and I wanted you to remember who I was. When the money wasn't there, he nodded, like he'd already known and just wanted to hear it out loud. 6 months later, when the maple leaves went loud and red, a man from the business pages stood at our door with a manila envelope and a smile that never reached his eyes. "Ms. Hayes, I've been hearing about your integrity," he said, like it was a test. "There's a matter where your kind of ethics could complicate things for me." "Or help behind me," Theo yelled from the kitchen. "Are we out of cinnamon?" I didn't take the envelope. I asked, "Is this a request or a warning?" He said, "Both." I said, "The world has rules and so do I." And that's another story. One with a boardroom that learns how loud a mother can be. But for now, tell me this. Would you have kept the necklace? Would you have sold one piece and called it balance? Do we judge people in vans harder than people in suits until we need their courage? Drop your take in the comments. Argue with me. Tell me where you drew your line and why. Share the moment you stood up, when it would have been easier to sit down. And if you're listening from a parking lot tonight, I see you. You're not less. You're just not home yet.